If your loved one is diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be entitled to compensation. Almost all foreigners will say that Rudd beer tastes like toothpaste. We need to buy European toothpaste. In the game, fireworks are shots. Hi, I'd like to hunt fireworks. This is my money, and I need it now. Call J.J. Wentworth. 877 cash, now. I've heard Canadians ranting, but I often say MMMG in response to a thank you G, naughty pleasey. He found it undignified and rude, although in fact it was the same as saying of course. A Brit abroad, I once sold a frozen turkey at Walmart, wrapped in 6 packs of mirrored light bulbs, as something special for the Super Bowl or something that I don't want to talk about, but it made me laugh. Huge size and lack of trains. I was excited about going to America because my friend from England thought he would be able to tour the country and visit all his American online friends. I was embarrassed to tell him that a trip from California to Georgia wasn't exactly a day trip. My friend has a laboratory colleague from the Netherlands who said he wanted to take his family from Wisconsin to Montana to see the mountains. The trip doesn't have to be long, in fact, it's the whole way in one direction. This road is Interstate 90, the longest in the United States, extending less than 5,000 kilometers from end to end. But don't worry, it's only half the way from Wisconsin to western Montana. This really applies to all groups of people, but there are many rational Americans who are no different from other people in the world who are informed about world events, about American stereotypes and crimes about which news and films are made. Americans living in Europe, obviously, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches drive my colleagues crazy. Why would anyone eat them? Meanwhile, they are eating butter and jelly sandwiches, as if there is nothing strange about it. A real barbecue in a smokehouse is how wonderful the top layer turns out. 1. Brisket, to be honest, is one of the best dishes known to mankind. Smoked pork is the only dish that makes my mouth water. It is not taken into account. There are several really first-class beers in America. They're just the ghosts of 7-Eleven. Crappy beer is something everyone knows because it's produced cheaply by big companies that can afford to advertise it. They infuriate me. Most good beers in the United States are barely advertised and seem to rely mostly on word of mouth. There are many idioms specific to the United States. I was talking to a friend in South Africa and casually dropped the phrase shook myself and came out and he looked at me as if I had flown from another planet. Obviously, this happens even more often with people for whom the language is not their native language. My German teacher told a story about how he tried to use the expression a big shot in German. He was cleaning the apartment he lived in because his boss was coming. When his German roommate asked why, he replied, of course, dig the cheese. The Germans had no idea why the Americans were preparing for mass shipments of cheese. This may be a limited answer, but I don't think they will understand the complexity of the situation of Protestants in the southeastern United States. In addition to many non-doctrinal subsections, we are talking about disagreements in the church over the color of the carpet and the generally accepted role of the young pastor. Not to mention how it affects public policy. 1. This is one of those topics that I can talk about for hours. A few years ago, a loud dispute broke out in the church where my grandparents lived because of the presence of chairs and benches in the church. Our country was built by certain people who came to power in a surprisingly short period of time and rose from nothing to everything. People like Carnegie or Rockefeller. Thanks to this, people can develop quickly and always show interest in doing wonderful things in college, can have a great career, can get rich, can get a big house and lifestyle. I may be wrong, but people in other countries just live a small life, which, in my opinion, is cool and looks much more meaningful. Student sports, especially football and basketball, to some extent. I would probably like to focus on how people relate to their universities. Clothes, home decorations, license plates. People are really proud of which school they went to, and if their athletics program is good, they go there. People may not notice that football stadiums in Michigan are the same size, if not bigger, which makes Camp Nou fun. Why can't we ban the carrying of guns in America overnight? Studying in Norway, And now in a country where the rules are followed, they seem to think that the Americans are deliberately handing over weapons to the government because they talk too much about it. It's ridiculous. Americans tend to distrust our government. The idea that you trust your government and it will do everything in your power if you leave it alone is ridiculous here. Suburbs during the baby boom and economic recovery after World War II. In the United States, the process of moving from big cities to the suburbs has begun. Levittown was founded outside New York City in 1947 and has become a role model. People get attached to him, especially rich whites who promote American culture. Levittown itself was inhabited only by whites. I think a lot of the cultural differences that surprise non-Americans come from this period. The isolated individualism of Americans stems from the fact that they sell cheap houses to individual families, rather than large apartment buildings. This required the development of an automotive culture that paid for itself. As the suburbs took over agricultural land, it was necessary to concentrate food production in the Midwestern states. This meant the development of long-distance road transport, an increase in the number of paved roads, and, ultimately, the creation of an interstate system, as well as the creation of a civil defense system when the Russians invaded the country. This is why many Americans cannot drive cars with a standard transmission, because this model is mainly used on the highway. Even the red plastic cup that always appears on the pages of Reddit attracts tourists from the USA. It's connected to the suburbs. When American families want to spend time with other families instead of going to a public park, disposable meals are much more popular because they don't make sense to use the best dishes, cups and cutlery, so invite everyone to one house where there are a lot of people. Paris is about 1,500 miles from Moscow. Los Angeles is about 2,500 miles from New York City. The reason why many Americans do not have passports or do not speak foreign languages is that we rarely have enough time to explore our country. What in Europe is called trips to other countries, we call trips to work. Taxes. Taxes depend on where you are located, and companies want to be able to advertise a single price for different states and cities, so they are not included in the price. Since I am not an American, I will say bluntly, in any case, as far as your Americans are concerned, what non-Americans will never understand are cookies and gravies, and none of us will understand your love for your country's gravies. Perhaps because of the size of the country. At first, it will be difficult for you to understand that you cannot get from New York to the Grand Canyon in one day, unless you are from Russia, Canada, China, or other places of comparable size. I had to explain to someone at Niagara Falls that I couldn't see New York from there. The US is big, and in many areas there are no sidewalks or bike paths, so cars are very necessary, and in some places they are 100% necessary. Besides, this place is far away. I'm not far from New York City either, but I still have to drive about 45 minutes one way until I get to the mall to go shopping. The real sound that a tornado makes when flying over your trailer park. It's not like the roar of a freight train, it's like a B-1 bomber with full afterburner. The idea of mixing something with chili and it. I brought chili and fleet to make a fleet pie for the Austrians, whom I visited some time ago, and they were completely amazed that it did not even occur to anyone to combine these two dishes. Chili itself was also quite far away for them, but at least they tried to do it. When Americans say, "Gee, I'm Irish," they don't say they're Irish citizens. Powerful cars that drive fast on straight tracks are designed taking into account the size of the country and the large number of straight tracks everywhere. Why is my car driving on cammed and Virum? Because that's what I wanted. We call ourselves Americans because there is no good alternative to how to address our citizens. We know that America is not the only country on the American continent, but what else do you want us to call ourselves? Americans. Radio station. The U.S. government will prevent the violation of the rights of citizens abroad. Example: Amanda Knox. She was found guilty, and then the sentence was overturned, and she was acquitted. She returned home. Italy issued a warrant for her arrest, and the United States refused to comply, citing double jeopardy. You can't be tried twice for the same crime. Almost all Britons who met him after moving to the UK believe that Route 66 still exists as a whole. They do not know that only a small part of it exists only as a tourist attraction, and it is no longer allowed to travel around the country. I tell them to choose Interstate 70 as an alternative, but they are not interested. It's just crazy. If your dirty laundry attracts the attention of the international media, your country will look like a bunch of arrogant homophobic racists, demonstrating how much we value our individuality and autonomy, as well as the fact that we trust the public more than the government. Why do we call people African Americans, Asian Americans, or something else weird? We are all Americans. I've never heard of Germans in Africa or Brits in Asia. The fact that you use imperial units does not mean that you do not know metric units. We regularly use both. You will never win the Baseball World Series, even if your country plays in it. With the exception of a couple of Canadian teams, we do not invite outsiders to the World Cup. There are 52 states here, not 50. Yes, I'm sure. In fact, I'm sure you're thinking about Trump. Soda, as well as free refills. French fries, chips, ice cream, salad greens, breadsticks, meat. If it is served in one form or another, it can be added for free. Don't call me Yankee. I'm from Louisiana, and it's just insulting. I'm a geek who lives in the South. When I was in London and called myself a Yankee, I didn't realize that someone was saying that I was an American and not a Northerner. It's great to spend the day shooting something outside the city. There's nothing better than some old TV, maybe an old car, some tannerite, and getting a few friends with guns to come and have a shootout. I don't hunt. I don't think I need a weapon for protection, but, Dan, it's a pleasure to shoot with it. It's funny, because even many Americans don't understand why we do things our way, and they get outraged when people tell us what to do, or try to explain why we don't act the way we do in other countries that don't try to understand our history and culture. While Americans are being scolded for not understanding the rest of the world, many people from other countries whom I met know more about the United States than about current news. In the United States, in addition to the culture of the country, there is a culture of different regions. Try the local cuisine when you visit us, and think that we eat not only burgers and hot dogs. I'm a native New Yorker, and when I travel to different parts of the country, I treat it like I'm visiting another country. For example, I study local cuisine and look for the best places to taste it. A really big truck with a V8 engine. Big trucks with mud tires are nonsense and a waste of time and money. Put a man behind the wheel of a V8 mud truck. Oh shit, it's so much fun, honestly. Differences in culture, values, food and appearance. I tried to explain to myself that a man from Boston would legally be exactly the same as a man from Louisiana. This man would be the same as a man from Seattle, and this man would be no different from an Amish woman from Lancaster. I did it these four people, who literally have nothing to do with each other. Macaroni and cheese are eaten in many places. My Finnish friend tried something without crackers for the first time at the age of 17. So it tastes even better. She also thought that macaroni and cheese was what she dreamed of until she turned 15. Daddy came to you with a hangover. Write in the comments to get well, Daddy, and you will no longer suffer from a hangover. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I post new videos every day. In the meantime, watch another video or not. Anyway, have a nice day, you're wonderful people.